These are cables of various types, and that's what I need to fix on the Chinook. This is just a plain cable wire. It has a lead end on it. Most cables come that way with an end. This one's a very small end on this one. Could be used for a choke or throttle cable, something like that. Here's another one with a lead end, probably for a clutch or brake or something. Here's a different type of end here. And I think probably most of them there are for bicycle, but some of them might be motorcycle cables for a light motorcycle, small one. This right here is called the ferrule, and this is the cable housing. There's always an adjuster on a cable somewhere, on one end or the other. The adjuster doesn't do anything to the cable, the inner cable here. What it does is it makes this housing longer or shorter. That's what the adjuster does. The way it works is the difference between the inner cable and the outer cable. And if you was to bend this or bend it at a sharper angle, that's going to change the length of this because it's running inside there. They're very cheap. If it's a bicycle cable, you get it over at Kmart. Used to be I'd get them for about $2 over there. I don't know what they want nowadays, but they come in various lengths. You see this one here has an inner cable that's quite long, so it might be a bicycle cable, maybe to work the shifter on a bicycle. But usually when you buy a store-bought cable, it'll have these lead ends on it, and that seems to be the thing that was tripping everybody up. Nobody could fix the cable, the brake cables on this thing. So what I'm going to do is make these cables so they work with set screws, and then maybe nobody will have a problem. Now this little piece of aluminum here looks to be maybe a piece of 1/2-inch square aluminum. Probably get it at the hardware store. Or you could make it out of key stock, which would be steel. That's takes a little bit longer to drill that. This piece they lost. I had 2 of them on there, so one of them is missing. So that means I either have to make another one like this or something similar. And what I'm going to do is make something a little different than this, because this one, when you put the cable in there, it had a one of those lead ends on the cable that dropped down through the hole, and that's what prevented the cable from coming out of this thing. You drop it down through the hole, then put this screw in there, dropped in, so it's countersunk in there, so the screw head doesn't stick out, which I thought is one less thing moving back and forth in the cockpit, and I wouldn't want anything to get caught on the screw, so I countersunk it. But of course I have a countersink, and that's what these are. These things have a little pilot on them to fit 3/16 hole for a 1032 screw, and cutter blades that, as you put it in a drill press and rotate it, it'll go down in there and cut that in there. So that is what I did here. Now my idea is to put set screws to hold the cable, therefore you don't need the lead ends, and anybody should be able to fix it. It shouldn't be any problem at all. Your only problem is going to get the cable from a bicycle shop or something like that. Motorcycle shops have them, everybody has cables like that. But usually they're going to send them, if you're looking for a bicycle cable, it's going to come with the housing with it. So you'd have to cut it to get the piece of cable out of there and then use that and fasten it with set screws. You can make it any length you want that way. At least that's the problem, or the idea of how I'm going to do it. So I'll put a set screw in here and drill a long hole in the end to put the cable in, and the set screw will clamp it in there. It doesn't work like a car. It doesn't have you know, you're not using the brakes as much as you do on a car or a motorcycle. So it's not really necessary to have that kind of durability on it, I wouldn't think. But you do need brakes. You don't want to ever fly an airplane off a paved runway without brakes, because it rolls like a marble and there's no way to stop it. So grass isn't so bad, you don't really need brakes, but on a paved runway, especially if you're around other aircraft, you need a way to stop this thing. This is a center drill. Anybody that has a drill press is going to want, drill press doesn't do you any good unless you have tooling, which means a whole set of drills and special things like this center drill, which helps you put a starting place for a hole right there, which you can work to a punch mark or something like that. But this is the start of the hole I'm going to put in there for the cable to go into, and the center drill is going to give me a little bit of a taper at the start of the hole, so that helps start the wires in there. Now I'm all set for drilling the hole down in there. I want to put a pretty long hole in there so I can get a good grip on the, could even put 2 set screws on that wire. But the wire size was about 75 thousandths, and I decided I'd drill this one 3/32, which is 93 thousandths, almost 94. So it's a little bigger, but I want that wire to go in there easy, and then I'll drill and put the set screw in there. But I sped up the drill press really fast because this is a small drill, so you don't run it too slow. I got to shut this off because it's going to make some noise, and there'll be chips flying, and I can't do it with one hand. Now, I'm going to put the set screws in there, but I don't want to drill clear through this block. I only want it to go through that hole in the middle. And then I'm going to tap that for a 1032 thread, which is what a lot of these small bolts on aircraft use. It's a 3/16 bolt. So you remember what I told you about tap drills. You need a number 21 tap drill, and that requires number drills. You'd have to go to a hardware store that would sell something like that to get one that size. It's called a number 21 drill. There's a tap drill chart you can look at on the internet, I'm sure, to tell you what drills fit what tap. Then to get my depth like that, you can fiddle around using these things, which stop. But in order for me to do that with this way up like this, I'd have to run this screw thread, unlock this lock nut, and run them both way down like that. Well, that takes a lot of time. You don't want to do that. So I put the quill all the way down, put the lock on here if you want to make sure it stays down, and then I raise the table up. I just lift up on the table to get this drill to look right where I want. It's not that fussy. I'm just trying to get it to stop somewhere close where it's not going to go all the way through that part. And that's how I ended up getting the drill stop set right, so it only goes a certain depth. Now I'm going to drill both of them, but they won't go clear through, hopefully, so I don't put a hole in my drill vise. But everybody should have a drill press. Gee, you can't make hardly anything without that. And it's useful for a lot of things. So that's how I'm going to go ahead and drill and tap this hole. And I'm going to go ahead and tap it after that. Okay, I'm ready to start tapping these holes. I put some WD-40 in these holes before I tap them, just to help get the chips out of there. You have to start it as straight as you can. Back it off a lot at the start and make sure it's going down in the hole straight. It'll kind of straighten itself out. This is what's called a gun tap here, just what they call that type of tap. It's got 2 flutes on it that cut, and it'll push the chips ahead of it down into the hole. But this isn't a through hole, it's a flat bottomed hole, so that's going to take some cleaning out. But I got an air hose here, I can get it out of there. Anyways, I'm ready to tap this hole. And if you want to try tapping holes, you got to have tap drills, you got to have the taps, and always get high-speed steel. Don't get high carbon. Some of them sell real cheap tap sets with high carbon in there. They might be good for learning on, but they break real easy and they're not very sharp and don't make a very good thread. So look for high-speed steel. Say HSS on there. And this one says 1032, which is the thread I'm putting in there. And this tap handle will probably come with, you know, any tap set that you get. You'll get something like that probably. Now that's what I end up with after I tap with that tap. But now I want to put those threads right down to the bottom of the hole because it's supposed to clamp that wire in there. So I'll show you what I do about that. Now, what I did there was I took the point off of that tap, the very lead that's on the end of the tap. I dipped it in some water, put it against the 6-inch bench grinder, and just ground it so it's flat on the end. That'll make those threads go into a flat bottomed hole, and you'll have threads right down to the bottom of the hole, which is what I need in this case, because these are really little short set screws. Another thing you can do is if you have an old tap or a broken tap, that's even better. If you got one broken, you can grind the end of that broken tap and make it flat like that. Then you got a flat bottom tap just for taking those last couple threads out of the bottom of a hole. You can't start this in a hole because it doesn't have a lead on it. But once you've already started the threads in there and you got it tapped as far as you can go, then you can use this, put this in there to take those last couple threads out at the very base of the hole and make a flat bottom tapped hole. That's how you do that. So save the broken taps. And by the way, remember that if you break a tap off in a hole, like these, if you broke the tap off in there so a piece is in there, you can't get it out. You got to start over. So be real careful not to break the taps. They're heat treated steel, they're hard and they're brittle. They'll snap real easy. They cut great, but they're not flexible, believe me. Okay, there's what I ended up with. I hope you can see that okay. It's kind of hard to get the glare off this thing. But I got 4 poles tapped in there, and I'm going to put these little tiny set screws in there. But what I'm going to do, in the end of that set screw, I'm going to grind that flat on there so it's less apt to want to cut the wires on the cable. But there'll be 4 set screws. I decided to put 2 set screws in each one. Don't know if that's necessary, but I don't know. I just like drilling and tapping holes, I guess. Now, the reason I said I'm going to grind that flat, I figure I better tell you how I did that. I'm just going to stick it up against the bench grinder to make it flat on the end so it's not cone shaped like it is now. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a little bit of a point to it, a little cone shape. And I'm going to grind that flat, which makes the set screw a little shorter. But to do that, I stick it on an Allen wrench to hold it for me. And I'll have to dip it in water because it's going to get pretty hot, but it won't take but a second to make those flat on there. This was what I'd made before, and what was on there is going to be replaced by one of these, which does the same thing. And it's a cable end anyways. Homemade, but I think it'll work. Now I got to paint them black so they don't reflect. I think that'd be a good idea. I hope this is a little bit easier to understand. There's my 2 set screws. They don't have to be real tight, just snug. It's not going to pull out of there very easy when you got 2 set screws on it. I put a drop of Loctite on that screw, and of course you don't want to make this so tight that this can't move. So it can't really be that tight. It has to be just a little bit loose.